Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Guzman with the CLC, and the organizers of this event have made a commitment to language justice. What that means is we're going to create a space where everyone can participate and engage in the language that they feel more comfortable in. We will use the simultaneous interpretation feature in Zoom to create this space. When I finish saying this same statement in Spanish, we will activate interpretation, and you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen that says interpretation. Everyone, whether you feel you need interpretation or not, should go in there, click on that icon, and select your preferred language, either English or Spanish in this case. Also, make sure you also hit the option to mute original audio so you don't hear both languages at the same time. Please remember, if you are speaking or presenting today, to speak at a measured conversational pace so we can make sure everything is captured in Spanish, since it is 20% longer than English. Buenas tardes a todos, mi nombre es Samuel Guzmán con la CLC y los organizadores de este evento se han comprometido a la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que eso significa es que queremos crear un espacio donde todos pueden participar y involucrarse en el idioma en que se sientan más cómodos. Usaremos la función de interpretación simultánea de Zoom para crear este espacio. Cuando termine de decir esto, activaremos la interpretación y verá un icono de globo en su pantalla que dice interpretación. Oprima ese botón y de ahí seleccione su idioma preferido, en este caso inglés o español. Asegúrese también que oprima la opción de mudar el audio original para que no escuche ambos idiomas a la misma vez. Let's go ahead and turn on interpretation, and everyone should select your preferred language, and we'll do a sound check on both channels, please.
Hey, Seuss, I didn't see the option for myself for that translation. So I just want to make sure everybody can hear me.
Sorry, so the translation is on and the channels are working
Okay,
correctly. So
perfect. All right. With that, Councilman Flynn, if you want to give us some opening remarks.
Just real briefly, thank you, Adam, and thank you to everybody who's here. I'm really excited to see some work get started on this. I'm particularly excited. I see Doug Wilder here at the prospect of the new bridge across Bear Creek to take the regional bike trail onto the south side of the creek in order to get that rather fast-moving bike traffic away from the playground and the picnic area where kids and families are. That is something that people called my office almost from the time I started. Said, could we make that safer? So not only is it making for a big safety improvement, but it is also going to provide for more activation of the south side of the park, where a lot of natural area is, and where a lot of people use the trails. So I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this. I think, Doug, you were on the advisory committee. My aide, Stacy Simonet, was part of that as well. Really looking forward to implementation now. And thank you to Denver Parks and Rec for pursuing this master plan and the improvements. Let's go.
All righty, thank you very much. So as we get started here, in addition to the trail project, we're also going to be talking about a new picnic area. So here's our agenda. We're going to do the trail project first, and then turn it over to Elizabeth Milan with DPR to talk about the picnic project, and then we'll do a Q&A for everything together. So I'm going to introduce our project team. We'll give some project overview and look at the existing conditions, talk about the proposed improvements, give an update on the project timeline, discuss some ways that you can provide feedback and time frame for that. And then, like I said, we'll turn it over to Elizabeth for the picnic project and then do Q&A. So for our Bear Creek Trail project, my name is Adam Lind. I'm the Trails Program Manager, and with us tonight is also Duncan Crookshank, who is the DPR Project Manager. And then this project is a joint project with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, also known as DOTI, and William Bond is here as that project manager. And then on our consultant side, we have a landscape architect and civil engineering firm. Melanie Ames is the Valerian project manager who's here, and then James Duval is the project engineer who's not present tonight. So just wanted to start. Most of you in this neighborhood know where Bear Creek Park is, but just wanted to give some overview and context here. Bear Creek is there in the Fort Logan neighborhood, really close to Harvey Park South and close to Lakewood on the west and the city of Sheridan on the east. And you can see that the Bear Creek Trail runs east and west from South Platte out west and ties into the Platte that runs north and south, or Mary Carter Greenway as it runs south. So just some background, in, I believe last year, 2023, the city completed a Bear Creek Park vision plan. It was a collaborative planning process for the approximate 90 acres of Bear Creek Park. There's a lot of public input in the vision plan, and they developed several guiding principles, including Connect. And one of the big theme of Connect was about alleviating circulation conflicts, as Councilman Flynn referenced, and creating intuitive and engaging trail networks. So that's some of the guiding features that led us to this project implementation. If you're involved in that vision plan, you've probably seen this map. And so this red line here represents the regional trail. And this kind of phase one of the project was really moving that trail to the south side of the creek, as Councilman Flynn said, to alleviate those conflicts, create new connections. This trail is actually going to be wider and bigger than the current trail to handle the high volume of users, and includes upgrades to one existing structure and then a new bridge structure that ties back in to the trail just to the southeast of 285. Again, so a lot of our work here at Denver Parks and Rec and in the city is driven by equity. And so this is our neighborhood equity index map, kind of have the Bear Creek Park area highlighted there in red, and shows the neighborhoods that are surrounding the park in need of investment from parks. Historically have been underinvested, and so now we're trying to heavily invest in these areas. So in terms of project goals here, as we mentioned, we want to relocate that trail south of the creek to reduce conflicts. We want to widen the trail and construct the trail to meet our new regional trail standard. The existing trail is 8 to 10 feet, and we'll talk about how wide we're going to make that in this new design. Also going to be adding wayfinding, trail lighting in places, which we're really exciting about, and additional trail amenities. And really with this area being natural and having really large trees, we want to protect those large trees and as much of the existing tree canopy as we can. So to talk about funding, this project started last year, and we expect design to run for another 2 years or so at an approximate cost of $500,000. And then our current construction estimate is really early on, so this number may change, is around $4.5 million, with 2.5 of that we got from a National Park Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife Land and Water Conservation Grant. That's a 50-50 match, so 1.25 of that is state federal funding, and the other 1.25 is DPR funding. It's a partnership project also with the Mile High Flood District, so they're contributing $1 million to the project. And then part of Denver Parks and Rec total is going to be 2.25 million. So this is our current estimate and funding plan to get this project through design and construction. Again, just wanted to give a site overview here before we dive into the details. These are kind of the limits of Bear Creek Park, and you can see the existing trail that runs along the multi-use fields, parking lot, playground, and continues east and west. So this site Site map kind of shows everything that's going on in the park. Yellow line vaguely represents that new trail alignment. We've got some other existing bridges that cross Bear Creek. If you're familiar with the park, some are wide, some are narrow. And then on the west side in red shows the new proposed crossing of the bridge, and we'll talk a little bit more about the details of that. And then the blue circle represents the potential new picnic site. And then the orange circle is the existing playground. So really trying to have the traffic that's just moving through on the south side, and then having the bridges that exist for people to reach the north side of the park, and kind of that local access to those amenities still remain, but separating the traffic. And just kind of take note of the numbers here. We're going to do a little walkthrough next in images of kind of going through the site and talking about what exists and then what will be replaced or improved. So this is starting on the east side. It's just an existing concrete trail. I want to say it's about 10 feet wide. No crusher fines adjacent to it. And so we'll talk about what this is going to get improved to shortly. We're going to be moving from east to west. So this is where the trail kind of intersects and currently crosses to the north side of the park and where all the amenities are. There are some trails on the south side connecting to the neighborhood and old asphalt trails that are in really bad shape. If you're familiar with the area, you're probably familiar with that. Yeah, you can kind of just see the condition of the asphalt here, cracked and crumbling. So some of this will be replaced. And then this is the first existing crossing. This bridge goes over the Marston drainage that then feeds into Bear Creek. We'll be replacing this drainage, or this crossing over the drainage. Kind of just another view looking back west. You can see the asphalt trail there. And then as we continue, same thing. The concrete trail or the asphalt trail kind of stays up above, and this desire path that people have made from the trail kind of staying closer to the creek. And we, in our new alignment, are more or less following this desire path, obviously noting that that's how people want to go. They want to be close to the water. And so instead of kind of fighting against that, we're taking the path that everybody has kind of worn in and making that formalized. This is the existing narrow bridge that's kind of in the middle of the park. So we'll be tying in here, but we'll not be replacing or changing this bridge with this project. So we'll kind of connect into here and then keep going west. So the bridge is kind of further back in this picture. So this is looking east. We'll be pushing the new trail through this corridor here, avoiding all the trees. So we're again limiting tree impacts and keeping that natural feel and habitat. And then this is looking kind of north. So you're looking back towards the creek and towards 285. And we'll be aligning the trail through this corridor to then reach the new bridge structure, cross the creek, and tie back into the existing trail. And so this drone is kind of looking above. This is the existing trail on the north side of the park. We're looking south, and within this corridor is where that new bridge structure is going to go. Try and fit it in between these gaps of trees that we have. So that's kind of a walk through the site. So proposed improvements here include upgrading the existing trail and constructing new trail to meet our regional standard, a new low flow crossing of that Marston drainage, a new 150-foot bridge over Bear Creek. We've recently just gone through an RFP for solar lighting, and we'll be installing that not continuously because it is a natural area, so we don't want to have the lighting covering everything all the time, but we'll be doing it sporadically throughout the site so that you can kind of see the next light from where you are. And if anybody has questions about that, there's some really cool timing on those lights to where they're dimmed overnight, so they're not just on full blast all the time from kind of like dusk till dawn. So there's different lighting profiles we can use. And then we'll also be installing new trail wayfinding that we'll be coordinating with kind of South Suburban and Lakewood that are using that Mary Carter Greenway style trail wayfinding through here as well. So on the left here is our regional trail standard that we'll be designing all these improvements to. So it includes a 12-foot concrete trail, a 4-foot crusher fine trail, and then 3-foot vegetated shoulders on each side. And then this picture on the right is just an example of solar lighting from another area that's going to look pretty similar to what we're planning to use on this project, and putting it kind of at the ends of the bridge so that we're lighting the bridge, but not actually including any lights on the bridge. So we'll dive into the details of this image, but this just kind of gives you an overview of the trail alignment, all the different kind of connections we're making to the neighborhood that exist, and some new connections, where that bridge structure is on the west, and then how we're tying into the existing trail, and where the project kind of stops before the 285 underpass. So starting here on the east, trail widening, new trail more or less following that alignment, including new connections tying into the neighborhood. We'll probably actually be replacing this all the way up here. We don't really want to just leave a little bit of asphalt in between new concrete and existing concrete. So we'll make that connection, kind of moving some of these connections to the bridge. And you can see this is kind of the desire line here, and pushing the trail out a little bit just so that we have some space between the trail and the creek to provide natural habitat and riparian habitat. So as we keep moving west, this is where we just were. You can see the trail come through this area here. Continue on west, kind of pretty straightforward here. Sorry, if I go back, this is kind of the area for the low water crossing. So it's not going to be a full bridge structure. There's some technical details with having that bridge raised above the flood elevation, and how much fill we would have to do in this area that would cause a lot of impacts. So we're going with a low water crossing, and then continuing in, tie into, again, the existing bridge that's in the center of the park, and following along this corridor, kind of splitting in through the trees as best we can. This is this bridge structure. Technically, it is I want to say it's a 90-foot and a 60-foot, so 2 spans through this corridor, and then tying into the existing trail on the east, and tying in and tapering down to the existing trail right before 285. So we have some renderings here that are always cool if you're not so used to reading plans and more of a visual person like I am. So this is that kind of existing view looking east towards one of the existing bridges. And so this is kind of how we plan to integrate the trail into that corridor. You can see the crusher fine path on one side, that 12-foot concrete path, and a new proposed light there. So I'll just kind of toggle back and forth to give that effect of what we're looking at. So you can see through this area, we have a lot of space, should be able to construct this without really impacting any of those major existing trees. This is always a benefit. And then the next rendering, this is kind of, again, an overview. You can see the playground over here to the highway, and the underpass is this way. And then here's this overview of the trail coming through, new bridge structure, and tying into the creek, tying into the existing trail. So just toggle that back and forth. There definitely will be some tree impacts in this area, but as we refine the alignment and kind of limits of construction, we'll be doing our best to narrow that and reduce those impacts as much as possible. We'll be doing some additional tree plantings with this project, and then mitigating in the neighborhood for anything that we can't replace. So I think these renderings are really cool and give a good feel for what that new project in the area is going to look like after construction. So in terms of impacts of this project, there definitely will be closures and detours to the trail. We'll have bike ped routes, detour routes signed. Luckily, a lot of the work will be separate from the existing trail, so hopefully we can have that work happen first. And then when we need to tie into the trail, we'll we'll have to close those sections, possibly try and detour around without getting too far out of the corridor. Since we're kind of pinched in from a highway, it's definitely not easy to get from one side to the other. And as mentioned, the project will include some tree removals, but we're aiming to minimize and mitigate on site as much as we can. So in terms of timeline, this yellow area is kind of where we are now here in June 2024. We expect to be at 60% design in September. And then from that point on, the timeline is a little bit stretched out. Since we're doing a project over a creek, it's in a floodplain and a floodway. So in order to get through permitting, we have to do what's called a CLOMR. It's a certified letter of map revision. Basically, we have to make sure that none of our improvements are going to put any additional homes or highway structures into that floodplain, or that we're not making any homes or structures in the floodplain worse. So that is a long process. In addition to that, we have funding from NPS and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, so we have to go through some approvals with them. So that kind of adds an extra, 12 to 18 months is kind of how we prepare for that. We'll be doing our best to expedite that as much as we can, but it is realistic that adds a lot of time to the project. So pretty much we'll get to 60, finish the CLOMR process and do a lot of that formal submittal. And then we'll kind of slowly progress the project, make sure we get our approvals as we work towards 90% design next summer. So we'll be able to integrate any comments that we get from you all and throughout this process into that design. We'll kind of have a final public meeting ideally next fall, once we know more about our timeline schedule for construction. We'll finish design in the spring, and then ideally we'll be in construction by the end of 2026. So with the project being in a floodplain, we're only really allowed to do construction from middle of October to middle of April. It's more or less what we call low flow season, when we're less likely to get rain and big storms that could cause flood emergencies. Last year around the city, we got a lot of rain and a lot of the creeks and rivers are raging, and we don't want to be tearing up the river or having a non-permanent bridge structure all the way in when a big flood hits. So that's kind of our construction season, is that 6-month window, especially for the bridge placements. So for feedback, any questions and answers tonight, we'll post this information on the project webpage, and if you've signed up to get updates, that information will be there as well. We'll have any of these boards, plans, graphics also posted on the webpage. My contact info is here. You can email any questions or comments directly to me, and we're planning to kind of leave our comment period open until Sunday, June 30th. So more or less just about 3 weeks for any comments or feedback for the trail project. And with that, I will turn it over to Elizabeth to talk about the picnic area.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Milan. I'm also one of the project manager at DPR, and I will be the project manager for this portion of the project. So this is highlighted in light blue on the right corner side, where existing northern entry parking lot is. So this location is where we are proposing a new picnic site. And so to introduce this project team, so this is going to be a different parallel but not so parallel project. So it's within the same park, but this is a separate project. So I'm the project manager for the picnic area scope, and this is also joint project with DOTI, Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, William. And for this project, the design consultant for landscape architect and the civil engineer is called Hewitt Solars. Wendy Aman and Logan Kaiser, they are both project manager and engineers. So this project is has goals of the improvements that are suggested from the Bear Creek Park Vision Plan that was just completed last March 2023. So, and this is 1B, phase 1B element, and it is to provide new permittable and wheelchair accessible picnic area near the northern entry parking lot. Within that picnic area, we are going to provide picnic tables, grills, trash bins, shade structure over the picnic tables, and the recreation amenities for your picnic time there. So those are the elements that we are aiming for. So this project has a very different timeline than the trail project. As you can see, the design just started this June, early beginning of this month. So we will have about 6-month period of design, anticipating the completion to be this December 2024. And the construction we are anticipating to start in spring and then be completed by fall of next year. This project funding is coming from Elevate Bond and Capital Improvement Project budget, and both design and construction together, it's 850,000. So since it just started, we don't have anything yet to show you guys and in terms of the design, but what I can tell you guys is to look out for an advertisement for a community design event, pop-up event at the park. So we are planning on doing this event mid-July. Specifically, we are looking for around July 11th. But that date needs to be confirmed. So plan on around mid-July this year, and then the location will be at near the northern entry parking lot. And we would like to hear your design input on what kind of activity you want to do at the new picnic area. Like, do you want bocce ball, or would you like to play cornholes, such as those kind of games or any other activities? And then also we like to hear what kind of shade structure style you like to see. So yeah, we will have advertisements going out, flyers, and yard signs will be installed near at the park or at the park as well. So look out for those for your participation. And that's it for picnic project.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, so now we'll open it up to any questions. We can answer any questions that were in the chat first, and then feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself, or just keep adding questions to the chat.
So we do have a couple of questions from Councilman Flynn. The first being, the bridge over the creek at the east end of the park was closed recently for a brief period for structural evaluation. Can you speak to the condition report and life expectancy of that particular bridge?
Yeah, we'll have to follow up with some details on that from the bridge group. I know during the inspection, the water level was kind of high, and there was some concern about the footings of the piers. And then once the water level went down, they were able to get in there and do some more close inspections and found out that it wasn't as bad as they had originally thought. So it's definitely not in that condition of where they expect any closures to happen again in the near term. I know the bridge is on the list of projects to get improved from that vision plan, but not as part of this phase 1 of the project. So we can definitely follow up with the bridge group and get some more information for you, Councilman Flynn, and anybody else that is interested.
So Councilman Flynn's second question is, in 2019, a Boy Scout from Mullen earned his Eagle Badge by engineering and constructing a series of milepost markers between Lowell and Wadsworth at half-mile intervals. Do any of the trail changes alter the existing path on the north side and change any of those really lovely measurements installed by the Boy Scout from Mullen?
No, there's no changes on the north side. I think we'll probably have to have some discussions of, do we want to relocate those to the south side as that becomes kind of the main line of the trail, or do we just leave those in place where they are on the north side and just kind of have those there as the marker, since he did do that work. If there's any overlap on the south side, we would just reset those markers in the same location.
Thanks. Lyric, I'm going to let you unmute yourself and ask your question live, and then we're going to go back to Yvonne's question.
Okay, sorry, that took me a moment. I did actually have a couple of questions. One, Adam talked about low water crossing, and I wondered if you could describe a little more just what that means. You said something about rumble strips, but for those of us that don't hike or bike in the park, we might not really comprehend what that is.
Yeah, thanks for that question. More or less, it'll look like a bridge. It's a paved structure that'll go over the creek. It won't have big railings on the side or be as high over the creek as kind of that current one is, but it'll more or less function like a bridge that you can bike or walk over. Probably be, I think, between 15 and 20 feet wide, so that we're covering any kind of recovery distance to keep people from falling off the sides.
Right.
So I don't have a graphic right now, but we can definitely add that to the presentation or add it when we post things online so that people know exactly what that is.
Okay, great. And then my other question was actually for Elizabeth on the picnic area. Because that area where you're going to be building that, which sounds really helpful, by the way, is kind of right by the entrance to the park and the parking area there. Is there going to be parking closure or park closure involved with the construction of that?
That is not determined yet. That is something that we will let public know before that to happen, so that you know that where to to prepare ahead of time. Since it's a major entryway to the northern section of the park, we are not going to completely close down. It'll be probably just partially taking over the space in the parking lot.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Lyric and Adam and Elizabeth. Yvonne's question is, I'm curious about the width of the new path. It sounds quite wide, and then an additional crusher path next to the new concrete path. Why make this path this wide through a natural area?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the guidance, I can kind of maybe roll back real quickly to the graphic. This regional trail, so Bear Creek is considered a regional trail as it connects multiple jurisdictions, similar to Sand Creek or the High Line. We do get pretty high numbers out here in terms of usage. So really not only preparing for the present, but preparing for the future as growth both in neighborhoods and the city, and also with people, just more people biking and walking. And as the park gets built out, imagining that it's going to attract more visitors. We don't want to have to come back and kind of widen a trail in the future. So what we're trying to do is, again, not only move people to the south side that aren't kind of using the park as a destination to reduce conflicts, but provide separate space for people both walking and biking and running, to reduce conflicts on the trail. And so with the high volume and future growth, we feel like, this, using our regional trail standard that was developed through the city process for Denver Moves Everyone pedestrians and trails, is right and applicable for this area, even though that the current side is natural. We will be trying to minimize any impacts, but feel like this is the appropriate width for that use.
So I'm actually going to jump to Mark's question. He joined a little bit late, but he wanted you to go back to discuss the location criteria and the alignment of the new path. His query is, it seems to be running more centrally through the natural area. And then we're going to jump back to Doug's question.
Yeah, so we wanted to keep it as close to the creek alignment as we could, but also want to give some buffer space. As rivers change and move, they kind of bow out. So you can see where this one's kind of doing this curve already. We actually had the trail a little bit closer, but thinking about future growth as the creek continues to change and ebb and flow, we want to give some width and some distance between kind of the current alignment of the waterway and where any future changes can happen. And so that's why it's kind of pushed a little bit back from the creek, but it's really keeping everything as close as we can to the creek, while avoiding a lot of the trees. There is a lot of large, I think, cottonwoods and other trees close to the creek, so we didn't want to rip those out, obviously. And so we're kind of balancing that location of the trail, keeping as much of that natural habitat connected, avoiding trees. And this was kind of the sweet spot that we found, and also following kind of these existing desire paths that people have made through this corridor. So it was a balance of a lot of features. And then, a large majority of the park and the natural side down here is untouched. I know some of the future phases of the vision plan have additional trail improvements. So some of these kind of existing trails, I believe, are planned to remain, while other ones are planned to come out and new ones go in, that kind of follow some of the desire paths. So we can also make sure that we are adding some of that information to the project page and just connecting people to how this regional trail fits into the overall trail network that was proposed in the vision plan on the south side.
Thanks, Adam. Just to follow up, Doug asks, for the new trail on the south side, will it be signed as primarily being for bicycles? The images that you're sharing show pedestrians and bicycles sharing the trail. But from the vision plan, we thought that the main goal was to reduce bicycle and pedestrian conflicts.
That's a good question. Right now, we don't really have any paths that are signed just for bicyclists. We can definitely have some internal discussions and take that feedback into consideration. I think we can try and sign it, but even people going through might be less likely to want to go through the park where there's a lot of play activities happening. But that's definitely something that we can take into consideration and see if that makes sense, and that's what's desired for the separation here. It's definitely feasible.
Out of curiosity, what's the width of the trail on the north side?
Somewhere it's between 8 and 10 feet. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head which one it is.
So narrower than.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Judy asks if you can repeat the information that you shared about the lights, and are there any parks in the system that use that type of lighting?
Yeah, let me see if I can find that graphic. So we don't really have any solar lighting anywhere yet. We just literally kind of selected a vendor in the last month, and the contract will be going to city council in the next few months or next few weeks here. So we went through a open competitive process to get different vendors that provide this lighting. There are surrounding parks that have solar lighting, and Castle Rock, Aurora, Arapahoe County, I believe, all have solar lighting like this. So the lighting is designed to kind of, we have a lot of control over the what they call lighting profile. So we can set it to kind of where it'll come on 1 hour before dusk and 1 hour kind of after dawn, or any kind of variation of that. And so it won't be just on full blast. It's kind of on for the first 2 hours when you kind of expect commuting or recreational use, and then as it gets later into the night, those lights dim down to, say, instead of being at 100% power, they'll dim down to 20, 30, 40%, whatever we kind of like, and then they kind of turn back on to that high percentage in the early morning as people are using it for commuting. So it is kind of the first of its type. We are doing this on all the regional trails, so there's a lot of projects and funding that we're putting into the South Platte River Trail that'll have this lighting continuously, and other trails throughout the city. So it's something new, but based on the feedback that we've got from other cities that are using the lighting, it's very reliable, easy to install, low cost, low maintenance. So we're excited to try that out here within our Denver trail system.
So related to the lighting, Mark asks, does the lighting design take into account wildlife present along the creek and the trail?
Yeah, so we completed, so before we did this procurement for the solar lighting, we went through a trail lighting study that looked at a lot of these things. And so we have a lot of criteria developed on what those lighting levels are, different lighting levels based on where you are. If a park is more is close to downtown, like Confluence Park, we would have higher light levels, but out here in a natural area, we'd have different lower light levels. We'll have different light temperatures. We'll definitely be designing to have as little light as possible actually get into the creek and into the riparian buffer. So I think, almost anywhere except for the bridge crossing, there won't be any light getting into the waterway. So as we get further along with the alignment and the design of the lighting, we'll be looking at those details to think about the natural habitat, wildlife, all those kind of impacts, the color of the light, the brightness, the lighting profile, all of that stuff will be kind of customized for this setting. It's not just one size fits all.
Thanks. Yvonne has a question about future plans, and the question is, do future plans include interpretive information on the very interesting and unique system of lakes in the natural area on the south side of the park? They are a unique feature to Bear Creek Park.
Yeah, are you kind of discussing kind of this Marston drainage kind of combination of lakes that then feed into Bear Creek?
And Yvonne, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to specify.
Yeah, those several lakes that drain down from like Fort Logan Cemetery down to the creek.
Yeah, honestly, off the top of my head, I'm not familiar. I imagine that the vision plan does talk about that. I know we've been talking about those lakes with our project partners and any future improvements to those structures and the design of those. So I think as we can definitely pass that comment on, and as that continues to develop, include some of that information, and probably also talk about with this project if there's any interpretive signage that's appropriate to talk about the creek and the natural habitat, wildlife, plant life that's in that corridor. It's definitely something we can think about adding and kind of using to enhance the tie-in between trail users and the environment. So thanks for asking that.
Well, we've exhausted the questions in the chat. Oh, Doug, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Unmuted. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to ask a question again about the alignment. I understand it's not settled yet. I would like to know to what degree was it considered widening the north existing trail and putting in barriers and say medians that have been used in other parks around the country to reduce conflict. Was that at all considered? Because the cost of that trail on the south side with the bridges, I imagine is really pushed the price way up. Did you consider just widening the trail on the north side?
I mean, I think that was evaluated at least in discussion with the vision plan. I wasn't tied in with that process directly, but as Councilman Flynn stated at the beginning, a lot of the drive for this and a lot of concerns are just that conflict between people biking, walking, but not only on the trail, also with people having to cross the trail to get to the creek, to get to picnic areas and other things on the south side of the existing creek, and then to the kind of open area that hosts a lot of athletic events for kids on the north side. So really the whole drive behind this project has been separating trail use and creating a separate trail on the south side to get through the plan. And that was kind of the outcome recommended in the vision plan that went through, I don't know, I'm guessing you were involved, but year plus of
Yeah.
community engagement and process. And so with that vision plan kind of finalized and endorsed, we're kind of moving with the implementation phase on the south side.
Okay.
Now, certainly if there are other questions, feel free to raise your hand.
Sorry, I do have one more question.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I know there's lots of other things in the vision plan, so I imagine there'll be more meetings like this to discuss other parts of the vision. One part I wanted to ask about was the YMCA field that is on park property owned by the city. Will part of the new plan be to provide signage for that so that people can understand that field is part of that's part of the city park and people can use it? Because I think a lot of people think it's probably just YMCA property.
Good question. I do not have the answer for you for that, but we can follow up with our team that was more involved in that vision plan and kind of dive into those details and circle back with you, Doug, on that question.
Okay, thanks.
I'm pretty sure that the vision plan does talk about that area and kind of reusing that space and making improvements in that area. Just not sure exactly what those specifics are.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Do we have any?
Sorry, Nora, and I was just gonna add, since Adam's been mentioning it quite a bit, the vision plan can be found at denvergov.org/park projects. I'll put the link on there. That way, in case people want to see what was in that vision plan, and then put in one thing I will just clarify, you might be hearing master plan, vision plan, especially during the outreach. DPR has been moving more towards using vision plan. It's one and the same when you see it. So if there's specific parts of this project that you're interested in outside of these two aspects that DPR is working on in the near future and what's going to happen, you could go back and refer to that plan just to make sure that that you're able to see what was talked about on that part of the park.
Kiara actually just dropped the link in the chat if you want to access that vision plan directly. Seeing no hands raised or additional questions, Adam, I'm wondering if you could put your name and contact information back up on the screen in case people need to reach you. There we go.
Yep. Feel free to email me any questions, comments. If you had things that we couldn't answer, we're taking notes so we can circle back with you, but this will put your email address directly into my email, so we can get those answers for you. And then if there's no other questions, Councilman Flynn, do you want to make any closing remarks, or we good to free everybody to go eat dinner?
Far be it from me to hold up people going to dinner. I just posted that I have to leave for another meeting in about 5 minutes. So I'm leaving now. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to the DPR team.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be looking forward to communicating with you in the future. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.